Cat Black here. Birmingham church bombed on this date in 1963. As someone deeply grateful to and supportive of the civil rights movement of the late 20th century, this date of domestic racial terrorism is one of those signature moments showing what my beloved ancestors and elders faced, and to an extent, what I face today. We have to be very clear that the same status quo ideology that drapes itself in the cross and the flag and what have you is also the same status quo ideology that was driven to acts of the most barbarous domestic terrorism against black people in the South and elsewhere, simply for wanting the rights we allegedly had enshrined in the Constitution. On this particular egregious day, 4 little girls were murdered, 17 people wounded, when dynamite placed in the basement of a black church detonated. Placed, ironically enough, by fellow Christians. We need to keep this very clear in our minds. I grew up in the black church, like many of us, but as a little boy in a Jim Crow light, post-Voting Rights Act, post-Civil Rights Act, southeastern Georgia town, it was still abundantly clear that the Jesus that my pastor talked about, that our choir sang about, that my folks told me about, couldn't have been the Jesus that the white folks across the rhetorical and racial railroad tracks worshipped. The double standards, the false allegations, all of this is wrapped into this garment of discrimination that led some to sink so low as to try to blow up a black church. And I can't help but think, in the wake of a spate of bomb threats that targeted HBCUs, historically black colleges and universities, around the country a few days ago, following the murder of a high-profile conservative Christian. Can't help but wonder, will our black churches, schools, and other places be targeted by the same domestic terrorism? This isn't leftism. This isn't me reading from a script that some hipster or some hippie wrote. That's the contempt that the status quo ideology has for black descent. They don't think that we have the intellectual heft or bandwidth to be able to critique blatant injustice without it being at the behest of some pale progressive somewhere pulling our strings. But the fact remains, on this date, a black church was bombed in 1963, and the status quo ideology that professes itself to be Christian isn't saying a mumbling word, which is fine, because brothers like me are.